February 20th, 1943. It must have been a deeply unsettling experience for the seasoned German tank commanders operating north of the Kasserine Pass in Tunisia that morning. The battle reports generated later simply could not capture the sheer bewilderment felt by the Wehrmacht. Across the dust-choked canvas of the North African theater, American Sherman tanks performed maneuvers that contradicted every established military doctrine of the time. Through the haze of battle and the lingering smoke, 5 Sherman tanks, physically separated by broken terrain that offered no direct line of sight between them, converged on German positions with a synchronization that seemed truly supernatural. There were no signaling flags, no desperate flares shooting skyward, and certainly no riders risking their lives speeding between vehicles. Yet, they moved as a single, unified organism, each machine covering the blind sectors the others couldn't see, with every crew member knowing the precise location of their comrades. In painful contrast, the crews inside their highly regarded German Panzer IVs, equipped with the FUG-5 radios, were struggling mightily against a frustrating reality. Tank commanders found it intensely difficult to hear their own company leaders amidst a continuous deluge of static that completely overwhelmed their amplitude modulation AM systems. The German 10-watt transmitters, though considered state-of-the-art by the 1930s standards, simply lacked the necessary power to penetrate beyond a few hundred meters, especially when the massive fighting vehicles were in motion. Furthermore, the majority of German tanks were fitted with only receivers, meaning they could hear orders but were rendered incapable of reporting what they saw or calling for help. This crucial limitation forced German tank platoons into a rigid, inflexible hierarchy. The platoon leader transmitted orders, and subordinate tanks could only acknowledge these commands through observable actions, rather than simple verbal confirmation. The American forces, however, were utilizing a powerful technological advantage that the Germans didn't even know existed. This was the deployment of frequency modulation FM radios in every single tank, a genuine revolution in battlefield communications. This system employed crystal-controlled precision, delivered 25 watts of transmission power, and provided a clarity that sliced through the relentless engine noise and battlefield chaos like a knife through paper. Emerging from Detroit's assembly lines, this was, in fact, the most decisive technological superiority of the entire Second World War, revealing itself not in thicker armor or larger gun caliber, but in the invisible electromagnetic waves that forged an unprecedented connection among every American tank crew. This seamless connectedness allowed them to operate in ways the Wehrmacht could never have imagined possible. This massive communication transformation had begun quietly on July 22, 1941, when the United States Army officially standardized the Signal Corps radio sets, the SCR-508, SCR-528, and SCR-538 for mandatory deployment across all medium tanks. While German forces were advancing through the Soviet Union, guided by tactics dependent on limited radio communication between command vehicles, American engineers at the Galvin Manufacturing Company, the company that would later be known as Motorola, were perfecting the FM technology that would immediately render the German systems obsolete. The critical engineering work was championed by figures like Daniel E. Noble, who first conceived the military application of FM, and Henryk Magnowski, the chief radio frequency engineer who successfully overcame the immense technical hurdles of installing such sophisticated, sensitive electronics into the brutal, electrically noisy environment of a combat vehicle. The result of their dedication was the complex SCR-508 unit, which weighed a hefty 181 pounds. This piece of equipment redefined the Sherman tank, converting each machine into a vital node in the world's first true armored battlefield network. The BC604 transmitter boasted a powerful 25 watts of output, a remarkable 2.5 times the transmitting strength of the German FUG-5. Operating within the 20.0 to 27.9 MHz frequency band, it offered 10 preset channels with crystal-controlled stability. Critically, the dual BC603 receivers integrated into the SCR-508 allowed commanders to monitor multiple frequencies simultaneously, a capacity that proved strategically decisive in combat. The real heart of the revolution lay with Edwin Armstrong's FM technology, licensed to the military, which fundamentally eliminated the pervasive static and interference that perpetually hampered amplitude modulation systems. While German tank radios picked up every electrical discharge, including those generated by spark plugs and electric motors, as debilitating noise, American FM radios delivered clear voice communication even during the ferocious artillery bombardments. The deployment of American armored forces during Operation Torch on November 8, 1942, marked the operational debut of the SCR-508. The 2nd Armored Division's tanks landed near Safi and Fidela, equipped with the new radios that immediately began to demonstrate undeniable superiority over German communications. Even the Afrika Korps, despite being the Wehrmacht's most experienced armored force, operated under severe communication limitations. A standard German tank platoon of 5 vehicles included only 1 or 2 with the full few G5 transceivers, capable of both transmitting and receiving. The rest carried only FUG-2 receivers, enabling them to receive orders but preventing them from replying or reporting enemy locations. The first major demonstration of American radio dominance came during the Battle of Kasserine Pass, where scattered elements of the U.S. 1st Armored Division maintained perfect coordination across a vast 50-mile expanse. Tank crews who had never met were coordinating attacks, warning distant comrades of threats, and calling for instant artillery support, all thanks to crystal-clear FM communications. German signals intelligence units, intercepting the American transmissions, were forced to report the exceptional clarity and coordination of the enemy. The intelligence section of the 10th Panzer Division found it particularly alarming that American units maintained reliable contact at ranges where German radios were reduced to producing only dead static. Most disturbing of all was the chilling realization that every American tank appeared capable of full transmission, not just the designated command vehicles. The German FUG-5 radios, operating on AM in the 27.0 to 33.3 MHz range, suffered from fundamental flaws. The 10-watt transmitter struggled to reach 2 to 3 kilometers even in ideal stationary conditions, and this limited range plummeted to mere hundreds of meters when the tanks were moving. The rugged mountainous terrain of Italy, where American armored forces arrived in September 1943, should have theoretically neutralized any radio advantage. Instead, FM technology proved even more invaluable in these difficult conditions, rendering German AM radios virtually useless. The SCR-508's frequency modulation sets excelled at managing the severe multipath interference common in mountain valleys, a challenge that completely defeated AM systems. American tanks coordinated movements through terrain where visual signals were absolutely impossible, achieving results that completely confounded German tactical understanding. After-action reports from the 1st Armored Division routinely described successful coordination over distances where German radios only produced static. The invasion of Normandy on June 6, 1944, brought new challenges in the form of the dense bocage hedgerow fighting. The SCR-508 radios immediately proved essential by maintaining continuous contact with offshore naval fire support. However, the fighting quickly revealed a critical, deadly gap. Tank radios operated on the 20.0 to 27.9 MHz range, incompatible with the infantry's SCR-300 radios, which operated on 40.0 to 48.0 MHz. This disconnect proved lethal in the close-quarters bocage, allowing German infantry armed with Panzerfausts to approach American tanks, while nearby American infantry had no way to issue a warning. American ingenuity, however, swiftly addressed the issue. Within weeks, tank crews mounted simple EE-8 field telephones onto exterior ammunition boxes, wiring them directly into the tank's internal communication system. By late July 1944, this modification had fundamentally revolutionized tank infantry cooperation. Operation Cobra, July 25th to 30th, demonstrated the full, terrifying potential of American radio superiority. The 2nd Armored Division, commanded by Major General Edward H. Brooks, coordinated over 200 Sherman tanks through dense radio networks, achieving unprecedented battlefield control. German defenders, including units from the elite Panzer Lehr Division, faced an enemy that seemed to possess supernatural awareness. American tanks responded instantly to threats reported by other units miles away. And artillery strikes, coordinated entirely via the tank radios, arrived within minutes of target identification. The average time for an American fire mission was a remarkable 3 to 5 minutes, compared to the frustrating 15 to 30 minutes for a German fire mission. The contrast with German forces was stark and painful. Panzer Lehr, once Germany's premier armored formation, had been reduced to a state of communication poverty. Most German tanks lacked radios entirely, relying on vulnerable visual signals across terrain where visibility rarely exceeded 100 meters. The few functional radios suffered from severe interference and limited range, preventing any effective coordination. The irony was deep. Germany had pioneered radio use in armored warfare, with Heinz Guderian insisting on radio equipment in tanks since the 1920s. Yet, by 1943, the German industrial machine could not meet the demands of Guderian's own doctrine. German production revealed a dire imbalance. In 1943, around 5,700 medium tanks were built, but fewer than 2,000 FUG radios, most reserved for command vehicles, left many German tanks effectively mute. Soviet forces fared worse. Most T-34s entered battle without radios, relying on flag signals that proved disastrous in early encounters. Even with American Lend-Lease support, only about a quarter of Soviet tanks had radios by the war's end. In stark contrast, the United States achieved full radio deployment across its armored fleet. Motorola's factories, repurposed from consumer electronics, produced over 50,000 SCR-508 units, each containing more than 2,700 components, ensuring every Sherman tank had one. This industrial scale, combined with advanced FM technology, gave U.S. forces unmatched coordination and battlefield control. The SCR-508 precision, crystal control, and dual receiver setup allowed Sherman crews to maintain stable communication in chaos, listening to both platoon and company channels at once. It was this unseen network that powered America's armored dominance. Orders flowed instantly, while commanders maintained full awareness of subordinate unit situations. Inside the tank, the integrated BC-606 intercom system was equally vital, connecting all crew members. Throat microphones and noise-canceling headphones ensured communication remained crystal clear amid the deafening roar of battle. Many German tanks tragically lacked intercoms entirely, forcing crews to resort to dangerous shouting or touch signals. American power management further enhanced the SCR-508's reliability. The unit automatically adjusted between 12 and 24 volts and used a dedicated dynamo motor power supply to provide stable, filtered power, eliminating internal electrical interference. German radios, drawing directly from the tank's electrical system, were perpetually plagued by static, leaving crews isolated. This overall advantage fundamentally reshaped American armored doctrine. American commanders could assemble flexible, ad hoc battle groups from different units, confident that coordination would be instant through compatible radios. This flexibility consistently baffled German commanders, who were restricted by rigid organizational structures necessitated by their limited communications. This difference was thrown into sharp relief at the Battle of Ericourt in September 1944. The 4th Armored Division encountered multiple German Panzer brigades fielding the superior Panther tanks, which possessed every technical advantage in armor and firepower. Yet, American radio coordination proved utterly decisive. Every Sherman instantly reported enemy positions. Tank destroyers received targeting data from unseen units, and artillery observers in Sherman command tanks called in devastating barrages within minutes. Over 3 weeks, the Americans destroyed 281 German armored vehicles while losing only 41 Shermans, in a staggering 7-to-1 kill ratio that defied the technical specifications of the tanks themselves. German intelligence, blind to the technology behind this tactical success, attributed it merely to superior training and rigid discipline. By March 1945, American communication superiority had peaked dramatically as forces approached the Rhine. The discovery of the Ludendorff Bridge at Remagen intact perfectly demonstrated the speed of American command and control. Radio reports reached First Army headquarters within minutes, allowing entire divisions to mobilize instantly. German forces, critically dependent on fragile telephone lines that American aircraft systematically destroyed, could not respond with comparable speed. American radio coordination established an impenetrable defense of the bridgehead. Tank platoons from different battalions integrated seamlessly, coordinating fires through their radio networks, while poorly coordinated German counterattacks arrived piecemeal and were destroyed in detail. The final encirclement of the Ruhr Pocket in April 1945 confirmed the total collapse of German command. American armored columns from the 1st and 9th Armies coordinated a complex double envelopment entirely through continuous radio communication. Inside the pocket, 325,000 German troops found their communications shattered. Forward air controllers, equipped with radios, systematically guided airstrikes on remaining German communication nodes, leaving commanders helpless. Field Marshal Walter Model's final messages before communication failure revealed the German desperation. No contact with adjacent units, no communication with higher headquarters. Fighting continues, but coordination impossible. The psychological difference was profound. American crews fought with the absolute assurance that they were never alone, linked across the battlefield by reliable radio waves. German tank crews, by agonizing contrast, experienced profound isolation. Unable to communicate reliably, they fought individual, fragmented battles within larger engagements. This dynamic extended beyond tactical encounters. American advances, such as the Third Army's race across France, maintained their relentless tempo, largely because radio networks maintained control across hundreds of miles. Even Otto Carius, one of Germany's most successful tank commanders, noted the debilitating challenges of limited communications in his memoir, Tigers in the Mud. Post-war analysis confirmed the strategic depth of the communication gap. American technical intelligence teams evaluated German equipment and concluded that German tank communications equipment was approximately 5 years behind American systems, citing the lack of frequency modulation and poor electrical suppression as critical vulnerabilities. Soviet evaluators reached identical conclusions, choosing to copy American radio designs rather than German ones for their post-war tanks. The core difference remained simple. Every Sherman received a 25-watt crystal-controlled radio, while only about 20% of German tanks had the 10-watt variable frequency radios. The SCR-508 transformed each Sherman from a single fighting machine into a node in a networked system, allowing 100% coordination that no individual German machine could ever match. The most profound realization came at Germany's surrender. Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel's comment, "We knew how to build better tanks, but you knew how to make them work together," perfectly summarized this fundamental truth. Whether precisely quoted or merely a compelling apocryphal statement, it captures the essence. America built not just 49,324 Sherman tanks, but 49,324 nodes in the world's first armored battlefield network. The revolution in military affairs that historians now link to modern network-centric warfare actually began in 1942 when the first Sherman tank with an SCR-508 radio entered combat. From that moment, the nature of warfare was permanently altered. The lesson cemented by the SCR-508 radio emphasizes that the ability to coordinate, share information instantly, and fight as a unified force rather than as individual vehicles determines victory more surely than any visible superiority in armor or armament. The German military's catastrophic failure to recognize and adapt to this silent technological revolution stands as one of World War II's greatest intelligence failures, proving that the smartest link often carries more power than the largest cannon. As we look back at this invisible edge that decided the war, it forces us to consider our own modern reliance on digital networks. Are we truly maximizing our collective intelligence, or are we building superior platforms only to leave them isolated and vulnerable to the next quiet revolution?